Welcome to Reading Around the Campfire. I'm Elena Groff, your host and the founder of the Facebook group Lesbian Fiction Campfire. On February 8th, we invited a group of New Zealand authors to join us. Our first reader is Kim Hunt, who was shortlisted for the Sisters in Crime Pride Award. Kim writes about the sort of kick-ass female protagonists you rarely see in crime fiction. Working-class heroes, fierce femmes, gender outlaws, and precious misfits. She's reading today from her Cal Nix mystery series. Here's Kim.
Cal Nix stood on the rim of the hidden valley, the secret habitat of the Malamai tree fern. Across the ravine, an aberrant glint of white in the green haze had pulled her vision. Not a slash of ochre from a slit, nor a blackened skeletal bushfire remnant, but a luminous, reflective surface. She scratched her boots through the sandstone rubble as she raised her binoculars. Some lowlifes offloaded a fridge from the lip of the Lyrebird track. Fucking dumpers. She resented doing rubbish collection, not exactly part of her ranger job remit, but the local council wouldn't retrieve it on their rounds either. Apart from being an eyesore, it was dangerous having an object like that hanging halfway down a cliff. Why can't people just drop it to the metal recycling at the tip? She returned to her truck and started the engine, emptying half a litre of water down her throat before she took off. Spring, and already her aircon was ratcheted to max, combating the clamminess outside. Cal floored the pedal and rooster-tailed twin sprays of gravel as she headed along the crest. It took her less than 10 minutes to reach the spot. The unsealed roadway, essentially single lane, snaked along the back of the range. Unwise to travel at more than 60 k's as there was nowhere to go but down if something appeared from the other direction, that or opt for a head-on. Traffic wasn't much of an issue on a weekday. Campers and hikers mostly arrived on the weekends. Still, it only took one vehicle coming her way. Cal parked on a straight length of track visible to any other drivers. They'd have time to stop if not pass her. She walked back along the trail, peering down at the road edge and below, looking for signs. She eventually found the telltale angled depression in the crest of gravel and silt at the roadside. The corner of a heavy object had been dropped before being pushed over the edge. Tiny weeds had sprouted in the dent, so it had happened more than a couple of days ago. Cal leaned over the crumbling verge, a steep rocky incline that fell hundreds of metres to the valley floor. Gnarly specimens of yellow bloodwood that had sprouted and clawed their roots through the porous sandstone remained clinging to the rock walls. Several of these tenacious survivors had halted the fridge's downward trajectory. She'd have to winch it out. Cal backed her truck along the ridge and positioned the front with the recovery winch above the spot. Designed to pull her own or another truck out of trouble, a mere freezer wasn't going to strain it any. She dragged a coiled rope, webbing strap, and heavy gloves from one of her gearboxes, tied the rope to the frame under the rear deck. She looped the other end around her waist and knotted it. If she fell and broke a bone, help would be a long time coming. She got her satellite phone from the cab and put it in a side pocket of her trousers. With the webbing strap over her shoulders, she unhooked the wire cable from the winch and ran it out down the side of the bank as she descended, using her gloved hands to slow her. The sun bore directly on her back. The rock face radiated its own stored heat at her front as she shuffled backwards, rocks and grit falling away below her from the unstable surface. She reached the battered cube and discovered why it hadn't fallen open as it tumbled down the face. The lid was secured with a hasp and padlock. Kind of odd. Maybe someone once stashed their favourite Hagen-Dazs in there and they weren't keen on sharing. She paused and caught her breath, wiping the sweat that was now running into her eyes. She dragged the webbing strap from her shoulders and worked it around the sides of the box, which, on closer inspection, had patches of corrosion and silty soil where the white paintwork had eroded away. Strange to see the soil, as the surrounding area was sandstone. It's come from the flat somewhere, she surmised. But why does it have soil on it? Was it buried? She fastened the strap hook, then worked the tensioner handle until it was tight. The broad nylon webbing offered better grip than the wire cable, which she attached through the strap where the lid met the main body of the freezer. Satisfied it was all secure, Cal made her slow ascent back up the rock face. When she reached the top, she took a breather on the track side and a thin strip of shade under the pickup tray. Respite from the sun, but her skull still pulsed like an overheated melon in a compost heap. When she'd caught her breath, she stood and went to the cab, finished her water. Standing at the front of the truck, she flipped the lever to operate the winch. The cable pulled taut and Cal leaned over the edge, watching as the white cube dragged up the rough bank. When it got to the top, she flipped the lever back, pulled her mobile phone, took a picture of the site and the object, then logged the GPS details. She went to another toolbox at the rear of the truck and got a large pry bar. She righted the freezer to access the hasp and noticed the box was now leaking a dark fluid. It stunk like gagarama, a sickly, revolting stench. She tried to squeeze her throat shut so she wouldn't dry heave at the fetidness, but still she had to stifle a convulsion in her neck. They've dumped it and haven't bothered emptying it. Rancid burgers, nice one. She worked the pry bar under the hasp and popped the 4 screws holding it. Much easier than dealing with the padlock. Then she lifted the lid and immediately fell back with a wave of disgust. She held her hand to her mouth as she gagged, scrabbling backwards away from the sight. She spat and retched to the side, gasping and wiping at her mouth with her sleeve. Fuck me. In disbelief, she kept her sleeve across the lower part of her face as she crept back for a second look. A soup of decay and rot and bones, floating half submerged in the goop, the grotesquerie of a rubber gorilla mask, hair and fabricated maw intact, peeping from beneath that, a human skull.
Thanks very much, Kim. That was great. Really enjoyed that. I know that for some of us, well, it's not me, but you guys, it's your first reading and it's really a tense situation as if it's your first time. So just relax. You're with friends here and no one's judging you. And you did a great job, Kim, I gotta tell you. It was very good reading. Okay, so I just also in between here want to thank Henrietta Meisner, who organized this event. She suggested it to me and she did all the legwork, reaching out to you folks and getting you lined up for this event and helping me get organized. So thank you very much, Henrietta, for doing that. Okay, Jade du Preez, is that how you pronounce your name?
Many pronunciations, but that'll do.
Well, how do you want us to say it?
I usually drop the Z, so Jade du Preez, but I'm from South Africa originally, and I think sometimes it's du Preez, and I think it's different again if you're French. So I leave that one open to you. Anyway, kia ora from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. My name is Jade. And again, I'd like to echo Kim's thanks for arranging this event. I didn't know there was this going on Zoom, and it's really nice as well to be connected with other Kiwi Sapphic writers, because I I'm discovering new writers through this myself, which is perhaps a little embarrassing that it's happening through a US-based organization. But it's also very special for us in New Zealand as well, because February is when we celebrate Pride. So it's nice that it's all come together at this time. So yes, I'm a South African New Zealander. I have a long-standing connection to Japan, which will come through in my work. And other than writing, I now work as a lawyer. But previously, well, my background is in fine arts, so I also do a bit of sculpture and painting and so on. I'll be reading from my debut novel, Outsider, and that's presented by Adina Publishers, who are a newish LGBTQIA publisher who are based in the States. They're a really lovely team there, so if you enjoy what they do, please support them. I did ask if they had any message to pass on, because we have this event and some others, and the message was, if there's anything we want to say right now, I think it's that queer storytellers and story enjoyers have existed as long as we've had language, and we're not going anywhere. I thought that might be a helpful message at this time, particularly for those based in the US. So I will read you quickly the blurb of this book, just to give you a bit of a taste. I think it's a little different to your average, and sometimes we find it tricky to pigeonhole in a genre. So I'll read that to you. Tokyo, 2017. Weeks from a birthday that will see her older than her mother ever was, Antoinette seeks two answers. One, how to explain her master's thesis on light as memory, and two, was her mother's death an accident or a suicide? When a long-lost pen pal returns to her life, Antoinette is propelled closer to the truth. Kyo, the top star of a gender-bending nabe bar, would sooner die than move into management. She needs an out, she needs cash, and most importantly, she needs an identity. As an unregistered mukoseki, she is a legal anomaly. Officially, Kyo doesn't exist. Their searches for identity intertwine with the lives of a video game-obsessed businessman and a writer who refuses to speak. Across Japan and down to New Zealand, from neon-lit alleys to tiny islands, their journey towards the truth is as tangled as their pasts. Fact and fable blur together in a rich tapestry that ultimately explores what it is to be human. That last bit's an embellishment. So I'll be reading to you from a chapter called Opening, and that's close to the beginning of the book, in which Kyo, the host, is taking Natsuko, the client, on a date to an exhibition opening featuring the artist Anna. Kyo rejoined Natsuko with 2 glasses of an uninspiring house red. They followed the flow of visitors to the first sculptural work. It featured a field of aluminium sunflowers, 6 feet high and 6 feet deep, each flower head moving mechanically. It was simultaneously mesmerizing and nauseating. Natsuko, who was unperturbed by her complete lack of formal art education, took mediocre pictures with her phone. Kyo, who had spent her teens working as a guide for Bijushima's art sites, retook the photos from a higher angle. Next was an installation piece entitled Nuke 2.0. Multiple screens displayed footage associated with the power plant disasters. The white water cascaded and swallowed up shrubs, cars, and houses like milk over cereal. Over speakers came snippets of recorded interviews with survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So white, I thought the sun had hit the earth. Then it was black as hell, croaked a man's voice. Found her shadow, but not her body. Afterwards, we didn't know where to go to remember. Lost his mind. Earth to Kai. Natsuko waved a hand. This one's bumming me out. I bet they don't even know those people. Huh, yeah, Kyo answered with a half smile. She didn't say, I know one of those people. She didn't ask, don't you fear becoming one of these people? Becoming old? Forgotten? Instead, she poked a fingertip to Natsuko's nose, eliciting a delighted eep, and asked, "You check out the cupcake guy?" And on they strolled at a respectful pace to hem and haw politely over a series of larger-than-life, hyper-realistic portraits of nudes sporting baked goods instead of heads. Sure, if you had enough cash, why not enjoy an oil painting of a sexy donut dude? This one's my favorite, Natsuko announced, stopping before a heroic depiction of a lean man standing contrapposto with a decidedly attractive pastry for a face. It would be obvious to use a croissant to hide his... She cut herself off with a giggle. Oh, Kai, it's so much easier not to have to worry about that, you know? What's that? Men get so jealous. They think with their croissants. Natsuko's shriek laughed again. Those, they're so precious about those. She was slurring slightly. Like, I think I get it, Natsuko continued. Why all those people, women, come to your club. It's a break from the drama, isn't it? A nice night out, no agendas, no pregnancy. I mean, not that. Or do you? Me? I've not caused a single pregnancy, Phil answered. No, I mean, like, do you ever get asked to, like... Kill simply raised her eyebrows in an impression of shock. Kai! Natsuko grabbed her arm, nearly spilling wine. Anything I say would be purely hypothetical. There are club policies, there are laws, said Kyo. Okay. Hypothetically, if we're talking about a working arrangement, it isn't something I would undress for. Don't really need to. Hypothetically, it would be something I would consider as part of a role, a job. I need to keep part of myself for myself. Untouched. Kyo let out a snort of laughter. The cocktails had been strong. So to speak. So no one has ever... I didn't say that. Why was she saying any of this? Then you've had boyfriends, Natsuko asked. Or girlfriends? A few, yes, women, but only terrible, beautiful, miserable women. Takes years to recover. Natsuko, silent for once, had settled on a soft, nearly sober smile. I hope you do. They continued to pass through halls of exhibits, most of them impressive in scale and cost. One student had assembled a small aircraft. That seems a little on the nose. At some point, Natsuko unpeeled herself from Kyo's arm in search of the restroom, and Kyo found herself at the front of the line for entry into the display by none other than Antoinette Kutsuki, master's student. The title stopped her dead. There, stamped on the wall in undeniable vinyl lettering, was the prince who would not be king. Below was a summarized transcription of the story she had relayed on the beach. She felt mildly dizzy. One person? Inquired a black-masked usher. Seems so, Kyo answered. Please take your time. A door was opened. When it closed, all of the noise was left behind. Kyo stepped alone into a stretching, twisting corridor. The walls were curved, mirrored, and overlaid in vines of blue light that ran its length for as far as could be seen. She noticed the sound then, sort of deep humming, like a bow being drawn over cello strings. Very strange. Wherever the speakers were, they were well hidden. Occasionally there came the knock of a wind chime or temple bell. Kyo walked slowly, her footfalls sounding like a rude accompaniment. Following the light ropes, haunted at each turn by the mournful soundscape, she finally found the end. Ahead, the light converged to a far-off point and became an impossibly bright white. She winced. The source, however, was not accessible. Through some trick of mirrorwork or glass panes or something, the destination appeared impossibly distant, cut off from the walkable plain. The hum died down. In the stillness, she heard her breath again. She felt colder, smaller. Do you like it? Antoinette Kutsuki's voice echoed down the chamber. The click of her heels became more pronounced until she appeared, cast in blue. She stopped several meters short of Kyo, clasping her empty hands. She didn't have her bouquet. Huh, the light at the end of the tunnel, Kyo said. Quite a show. Kutsuki paused. I thought my sister-in-law would be here. No, you didn't. Kyo stepped closer. No, I didn't, came the confirmation. I wanted to know what you thought. Well, it's interesting. Your colleagues have presented on climate change, artificial intelligence, nuclear threats, neo-feminism, whereas you, Kyo cocked her head, built a monument to grief. Mrs. Kutsuki made a sound like a sigh, but she seemed almost amused. Well, aren't all monuments made to grief? I don't know, Kyo pocketed her hands. I'm sure there are plenty made for victories or saints. Victories and saints, Mrs. Kutsuki echoed, stepping closer, are born of loss. Very clever. So you don't like it? If I were a rich woman, Kyo started. Woman, Anna interjected. If I were, Kyo continued, with my big house and endless funds, I would probably choose to purchase every other piece but yours. Kyo walked past Anna, back towards the entry point. But, she shrugged, as I am poor, I expect your piece will be the only one that stays with me. Antoinette laughed. What a beautiful insult. You used my story as your statement, Kyo said. Does that offend you? It's a lie. It's nothing to do with you or your work. To be fair, relevance is in the eye of, how about this one? There was once an emperor who wanted to save his daughter from sadness, began Kyo. Is this a true story? For the crown princess was all alone, Kyo continued. She had lost her mother. She sought solace in painted color. She spent hours in a locked chamber at her desk. It was her father's only clue. I know you know who I am, Anna began. And so he built a monument. And not just any monument. He took an entire island, a quiet little fishing village. He thought no one was watching. He sent in ships and architects and builders and their machines. They overran the island like ants on mochi. And then, in the end, the island was a gallery, a monument. Kyo finished and watched the expression of the woman across from her as concern turned to fear, then to realization. Pijushima, Anna breathed. You're talking about Pijushima. It was good to see you again, Mrs. Kutsuki. Is it Kyo? Kyo stopped walking. She looked down at her suit, Kai's suit, and cursed. She cursed her need to challenge her stupid arrangement with Natsuko and her all-round crap luck. That's right, isn't it? Bijushima? Mrs. Kutsuki continued. Amazing! When I tell... Please don't. No? I don't want to have it all joined up. I need to keep things separate. I don't know, stay away from your sister if that's... No! Well, I mean, it's hardly for me to dictate. Stay or go, just don't be an asshole. No promises. I can't believe this, Anna beamed. I'm surprised you remember. Of course I do. It's you underneath all those lenses and dye, and will you... Whatever she was about to ask, she seemed to rethink it, biting down on her lip. Kyo waited. Would you come back here again? Anna said. Would you let me take your picture here, in this space? Kyo was silent a moment longer, then asked, Is this for art? Yes. Am I the art? I don't know. Okay. Okay. Tomorrow then, when it's quiet. And with that, I'll pass on back to Elena. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Boy, I tell you, we're going to invite you guys back. You're wonderful. Okay, who's up next? Let me get to my handy list here. Right. So, EP Stuart.
Yes, I guess that's me. Let me know when you're ready.
Yes, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and the book that you're reading from?
Sure. So firstly, hello everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I am a very newly published author. Um, I am currently a ball of nerves and excitement. A quick bit about me without giving myself away. I am from New Zealand, but I've traveled extensively. I lived in Japan, Jade, the Netherlands, France, Australia, and the UK. I've visited about 26 countries over the years. I'm currently very rusty, but I used to be able to speak enough of the local languages when I lived there. Currently, I live just north of Auckland on a small lifestyle block. I'm developing a fruitful permaculture garden, and I live with a wonderful menagerie that includes my family, 13 chickens, 2 cats, and a prize-winning goat. Um, now, a bit about my book. Evie is my debut novel under my pen name, which is E.P. Stuart. It's about a mum who has a secret. She notices the beauty in the women around her, and initially she only dreams of crossing lines. But when not one, but 2 women demonstrate an interest, Evie falls down a rabbit hole of lust, lies, and secrets. So, what dangers lurk in a little harmless exploration? And what if you fall in love? So Evie is a romance suspense, and I'm going to read chapter 8, which is called Evie and the Disco. Let me just take a breath. I'm very nervous. Ow! Anna screams at me as I attempt to brush the knots out of her hair. I'm sorry, Hannah, but if you just stopped wriggling, I could be gentler. Hannah pouts and holds herself still while I finish brushing her hair. She wants to go as Taylor Swift. I style her hair with wispy strands around her face and help her into her sequin tutu dress. It's actually just her party dress, but she believes she looks like Taylor from the latest music awards ceremony. She holds her plastic microphone proudly and she belts out, "Shake it off!" Okay, Taylor, Mummy needs to get ready now. I leave her to dance around in her room while I pull on my ripped jeans. I settle for a black crop top to wear underneath the mesh shirt. Those Friday gym sessions are really paying off, and I feel confident to show a little bit of skin. As I thread the studded belt through the loops of my jeans, the memory of Lily's hands swiveling me around in that small changing room floods my mind, followed by the image of Simone wearing that lace top. If only I could. What? Ruin my marriage? Ruin theirs? I shake the horniness from my body and place the piece de resistance Axel Rose bandana around my head. I nod to my reflection. This look works for me. Steve is busy calming Jackson down in the lounge as I emerge from the bedroom. Jackson really wants to go to the disco too, but it's for school kids only. Jackson runs to me and jumps into my arms, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Jackson. Next year, okay? But you're going to have so much fun with Daddy. I hear he's making popcorn, and he's going to play some board games with you. Steve catches my eye with a raised eyebrow. This is news to him. I throw him a conspirational, work with me glance. I need Jackson calm so I can leave with my little Taylor Swift. Jackson turns in my arms to look at Steve with watery blue eyes. Yes, buddy. You can pick any game you want to play. Why don't you go choose one now, while I make popcorn? Steve jokingly glares at me. Thank you. I appreciatively nod to Steve as Jackson squirms out of my arms. Steve leans down and pecks me on the cheek. He pokes a finger through one of the large holes in my mesh top, tickling my tummy. I like this top, he growls. I reach my hand behind him and give his bum a quick squeeze. Later, I whisper into his ear. Come on, Hannah, let's go. Hannah emits a squeal of delight and proceeds to dance to the car. We listen to Taylor Swift all the way to school, and I can't help but feel like tonight's going to be a fun night. The hall is decorated with sparkly streamers, and the mirror ball is sweeping little white lights around the room. The DJ, Mr. Tate from Year 4, is dressed as MC Hammer. As if on cue, Hannah enters the hall to Shake It Off by Taylor Swift, and she shrieks hysterically as she runs to her group of friends that are already dancing in the middle of the room. Stacey is at the back of the hall, so I check in to see where she wants me. Stacey is dressed in jeans, a plain black tee, and is wearing heavy eye makeup. I can't quite figure out who she's meant to be. She looks like herself, just with hair down and slightly heavier makeup. I'm Shirley Manson from Garbage, she announces curtly before I can even ask. Nice Axl Rose. I can't believe it. Stacey just gave me a compliment. Right, you're on drinks duty. Her tone clipped and businesslike as she uses her clipboard to point me to the table across the hall. I nod and make my way over. The price list and instructions are laminated next to the juice boxes and bottles of water. I inspect my cash box for something to do, but it's not long before thirsty children approach with their gold coins. The outfits are amazing. Most of the girls are dressed in sweet little dresses, not looking like any particular pop singer. The boys similarly nondescript. But I take note that I think one or two could be Bruno Mars or Ed Sheeran. Rachel comes running up to me and slips behind the table, giving me a big squeeze. Eee, perfect Axl EV! Rachel is dressed like Mick Jagger, with her black leather jacket over a white tee with the famous image of the red mouth with the long tongue hanging out. Her son Archie nervously approaches the table for a drink. He's dressed in black, with a large cross around his neck. Rachel has applied eyeliner to his eyes too. Nice Ozzy Osbourne, Archie, I exclaim. He shudders. I don't know who he is. Rachel and I stifle a giggle. The kids here will know, will not. Sorry. None of the kids here will know who Rachel and I are dressed as either. Archie glares at his mum, drink now in hand, and joins his friends looking awkward. I take it you chose the outfit? I shoot sideways at Rachel as we take in all the characters in the room. She nods, then points excitedly at a little boy wearing the exact same outfit as her. My twin! She squeals in delight. It's still early, and children continue to file in through the doors. Rachel and I have a ball playing Guess the Singer until Stacey, aka Shirley Manson, stands in front of us, glaring. Rachel, you're on bathrooms. They're due a check. Rachel's smile instantly falters. She casts me a furtive glance, and with shoulders hunched, she heads dutifully to the toilets at the rear of the hall. Stacey shoots me a get-back-to-work scowl before striding over to the sign-in area. Jennifer glances up from her clipboard, twitching nervously before she is engulfed in Stacey's formidable shadow. Eyes still on the door to see what Stacey will do next. A vision catches my eye. Simone enters the hall holding Katie's hand. She's dressed as Madonna. Black elbow-length lace gloves lead up to bare shoulders. She's wearing a strapless black top with a black tutu. Long white and silver beads hang over her chest. Black lace tights cover her toned legs, and she's wearing little black pumps to match. Her hair is piled messily on top of her head, and curly tendrils graze her neck and face. The outfit is so tight. Simone glances around the room, clearly looking for a familiar face. Her eyes meet mine, and I'm startled from the thoughts of running my hands all over her body. I wave enthusiastically in greeting, a lame attempt to pretend I wasn't just checking her out. Oh, did I really just do that? I cringe at myself for being so over the top. Lily has stopped to give Simone a hug, and I'm left hanging with my hand in mid-air. I put it down awkwardly and scan the room and hope no one saw me. Lily has brought it too. Her sequin dress sparkles under the lights. Diamante-encrusted high heels support slender legs. The dress is actually rather short. As she bends slightly to hug Simone, I can almost see her. I need to stop staring. Looking down, there's a 10-year-old boy dressed as Elvis wanting to buy a juice box. Grateful for the distraction, I focus on my work. I give his juice box a shake. I'm all shook up. I do my best Elvis impression with the lip curl and everything before I hand it to him. He frowns, clearly not a fan of my impersonation. Who are you supposed to be? He asks rudely. Axl Rose. Elvis gives me a blank stare. Clearly his parents aren't into Guns N' Roses. Elvis turns to leave, but not before giving me a piteous look, like I'm tragic. Shocked at his arrogance, I call out to him. Maybe I'll get the DJ to play one of my songs just for you later. My sweet child of mine. I belt out the last few words in true Axl fashion. Staring at me like I'm unhinged, he scarpers back to his friends. I chuckle to myself at my own joke. What was that about? I look up to find Simone across from me, wearing a quizzical smirk. Oh, you know, embarrassing children is my forte. I grin as I spy Elvis casting me a furtive glance. You look great, Simone. Perfect Madonna. Lily sidles up beside her, joining the conversation. She puts her arm around Simone's waist and gives her a squeeze. Yes, doesn't she look amazing? Seeing Lily with her arm around Simone makes me feel strange. I'd like to push her hand away. Jesus, I'm jealous. Simone looks uncomfortable and shuffles slightly away from Lily's grip. I don't have a job to do. Do you mind if I hang out with you? Simone's eyes are wide, hopeful. My mouth runs dry. I'm not sure how to answer. Obviously, I want her close to me, but I also don't want her close to me in case I do something stupid. Lily spies Jennifer and Sandra on the dance floor with a group of little pop princesses. Flashing us a big grin, she sashays across the dance floor. Simone joins me behind the table. I like this. She touches my bandana, and her fingers stroke my face for the briefest of seconds before she retracts her hand. Thanks, I mumble. I'd like to compliment something specific about her costume too, but all I really want to do is rip it off her body. The DJ turns up the volume, and the lights dim. The doors have been closed, and the disco is officially in full swing. Simone and I stand side by side, watching everyone dance. My bare arm bumps against hers, and I feel the back of her lace-gloved hand press into the back of mine. I note her gloves are the kind where the fingers are bare. I daren't breathe. I can't believe she is standing so close to me. The sounds of laughter and music become dull to my ears as my brain hyper-focuses on the sensation of our shoulders and hands connecting. Standing stock still, I'm scared to move. I'm scared to look at her face, to see what she might be thinking. I'm also scared that I'm reading way too much into this. Subtly, I feel Simone's little finger snake its way around mine. My eyes closed, I feel her finger gently dance across my skin. Desire floods my body, and my heart hammers in my chest. I squeeze her finger in return, indicating that I like it. Suddenly, her finger is withdrawn. Startled, I open my eyes to little Willow, Lily's daughter. Can I have some water, miss? She innocently looks up at me. Simone has inched away, and I feel like I can breathe again. I glance at her, noting her cheeks are flushed, and there's a look of trepidation in her eyes. I'll leave you to it, Simone murmurs, then practically runs towards the group of mums and kids on the dance floor. I sell Willow the water and watch her take it to her mum. Lily unscrews the cap and raises the bottle in a toast to me, a devilish grin on her lips. Did she just? No. Our hands were behind the table. There's no way she could have seen anything. I watch the mums and children dancing for the rest of the evening from the safety of my drinks table. I do my best to focus on my job, but my hand still tingles where Simone touched me. Lily continues to catch my attention and wave at intervals as the night wears on. I do my best to laugh and wave back at the cheesy dance moves she's pulling with the kids. My eyes keep flitting back to Simone, hoping to catch her attention. She's acting silly with the kids, dancing and singing along to the catchy songs. I'm not sure if it's on purpose, but she keeps positioning herself in the dance circle to have her back to me. A weight drops into the pit of my stomach. She didn't mean to touch me. Now I feel foolish for squeezing her fingers. After 2 hours of dancing and frivolity, the night finally wraps up, and I can take my tired little Taylor Swift home. I hug all the mums I know goodbye, but Lily and Simone are nowhere to be seen. They must have left while I was counting up the drink takings. Driving home, the memory of Simone's skin on mine drives me slightly crazy. The image of her flushed cheeks flashes through my mind. Was that embarrassment? And that look in her eye, it was fear. Something tells me what happened tonight won't happen again. It's probably for the best. There you go.
Thank you very much, EP.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was great. Like I said, you guys are pros. We're going to have you back for sure if you'd like to come back.
Thank you.
So we're a little early. So if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask of the authors who've read so far, we can do that for maybe 5 minutes, and then we're going to take a little break and reconvene on the hour. So I'm going to change the view in the so that I can see everybody in case somebody has a question. Okay. No questions.
I
All
have
right.
a question for Kim.
Okay, go ahead.
Kim, I was really interested in your background and what inspired you to have such detail in your writing. And do you have knowledge? Were you a ranger? Do you know rangers? What's your research into this?
Hi, thanks, Jade. My very first trade was in horticulture and gardening many, many, many years ago. And one of the first things that you're taught as a horticulture student is to observe what's around you all the time, to identify it. So I just got into that habit, I guess, and I'm curious about the natural world anyway. I love it. I love being in a garden or being in the bush or whatever. So I guess that just absolutely fed into wanting to have a park ranger. I also wanted to have a protagonist who could move around as an individual, you know, rather than a police officer who's constrained by the rules of policing. So yeah, the two things kind of came together. Thanks.
Oh, very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed your writing, Kim, as well. I loved the little cliffhanger at the end once she opened that box. It was quite riveting. I think I'm going to read your book.
Oh, thank you. That's really lovely feedback. Thank you. That's really generous. Cheers.
You're welcome.
I saw another potentially raised hand there. Katerina, did you have a question? No, okay. All right. Oh, okay. Tuki, go ahead. You have to. Good.
Right. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
So I have a question for Kim.
Me too.
You've written three books that are set in Australia, and I hear that you have a standalone book that might be set in New Zealand coming out.
That's right. Hey, Tookie, lovely to see you. I've
Hi,
had
Kim.
online contact with Tookie, who's a reader of my work, so it's lovely to see all of you here. Anyway, yeah, the Kalnick series is set in Australia. I have another standalone series that I had on a back burner because I was trying to establish the Kalnick series. So the first of those is coming out this year. It's not too far away. It's called The Corrector, and they're thrillers probably more than mystery. So they have a slightly different flavour to the Kalnick stories. But I also I'm in the process of writing the follow-up to that. So it's another series, but they're again all standalones. You can read any, jump in at any point of the series. But yeah, obviously, if you start at the beginning, you've got all that background. And my protagonist in that one is a classic motorbike restorer.
Nice.
Oh yes, yeah. You really do like to burn some rubber. Well, your protagonists do like to burn some rubber, and I burnt some rubber over the Christmas period, and I kept thinking about Cal Nix. And I really have to blame you for every time I go onto Facebook, there's an ad somewhere for an old car that needs restoring. And every time I see that, I think of you and Cal Nix, and I think, what are these books doing to me? Anyway, I have to say that I really do appreciate your writing. You are a fantastic writer. Thanks for coming here today. I've really enjoyed the reading.
Thank you, Tookie, and I'm just so happy to have been invited and to get this opportunity. Thank you, Elena, and thank you, Henny, too. I meant to say at the beginning, thank you for all your promotion of our work. It's amazing, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah, 100%. I second that too.
Yeah.
And I also noted, Jade, did you live in Japan as well? Were you near Kyoto?
Oh, yeah, for a bit. Yes, I did.
Nice.
Yeah, we had an exchange. So I was studying law at Keio University over there for a bit. So I got my little alien registration card and stayed there, and yeah, yeah. So that was very interesting. I did pop into a host bar, quite a different style of one, rather more low key, with some of my friends who I used to go and do. We used to go and sketch people. I forget what's the word when you sketch naked people. There's a more there's a better term for this.
Life model?
Life drawing, exactly.
Life drawing, yeah. So I also
life drawing.
Yeah. I didn't study fine art, but I did 5 years at boarding school of art, and we did life drawing in our final year with a nude model. It was pretty amazing.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so 5-minute break, people.
Yep. Cool.
Anybody who needs to run to the, let's reconvene at 5. Let's say a 8-minute break, 5 minutes after the hour. Okay, so we'll resume at 5 minutes after the hour if anybody needs to leave. Okay.
Okay.
And
I'm here, even though you can't see me.
okay. Looks like almost everybody's back. All right, well, let's get going. Our next reader is going to be Andi Buchannan. Andi.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed hearing everyone read so far. I know we all write very different things, and it's really good to, hear from some of the writers were new to me. So it's great to hear what's happening. Um, I write as both Andy C. Buchanan and Andy R. Christopher, just to be confusing. I mostly write fantasy, but I write a lot of different things. Today I'm going to read from Succulents and Spells. I'll put a link in the chat, which, like this group, was a pandemic project. It was a lockdown project. I think early on in lockdown, some of my writing friends and I realized the projects we'd been working on, we just couldn't do them. And we sort of did a bit of a pact to write something light and short and a bit of magic, a bit of romance. And we decided it was all going to have witchcraft in. And this was the one that I wrote from that. It's first in a 5-book novella series, because of course it is. And I'm going to read right from the beginning. So this is Succulents and Spells. Laurel ignored the knock at the door. Any time before 10 was too early to expect a witch to interact with the world, in her opinion. She'd been working in the cafe until late last night and had just finished her coffee and twisted her blue hair up under her shower cap, ready for a hot shower. She shivered as she stepped out of her dressing gown. She'd done a lot to make this flat habitable, but nothing could ease the July chill of an old flat on the sunless side of Arrow Valley, pressed against the damp hillside. 20 minutes later, Laurel was warmed and clean, and the bathroom smelled of her cousin's homemade lavender and thyme soap. She pulled on her jeans and a thick brown knitted jersey and pulled open the curtains. Days off were terribly rare lately, but this time she'd turned off her phone. The sky was a bright winter blue and the breeze gentle. She was going to have a good day today. Her flatmates were at work and she had the house to herself. In the hallway, she stopped to check on her succulents, on top of a bookcase beneath the window. They were doing surprisingly well, healthy looking and thick with moisture. Maybe her life was a mess in other ways, but at least she could keep a plant or two alive. Turning to the kitchen, something caught her eye. She turned back and looked out of the window. There was someone there, sitting on a crumbling brick wall between her pots of marjoram and lemon balm. They seemed quite happy there, in a purple t-shirt despite the cold, and their hair buzz cut to almost nothing, tapping their Doc Martens against the wall. Laurel opened the door and used her best customer service voice. "Can I help you?" she asked. So much politer than "what the fuck are you doing here?" Looking up, the person on the wall scrambled to their feet. "Hello, my name is Marigold Nightfield, and I'm here to ask if I may please have some tissue samples from your monster." Laurel sighed. All hopes for a straightforward day had just gone out of the window. "You'd better come in," she said, clearing a load of clothes off one of the wooden chairs by the dining table, which was cramped against the kitchen wall. She hadn't been brought up to turn magic folk away. Hospitality was, sometimes annoyingly, how her family worked. "I've just had the last of this morning's coffee, but would you like some tea?" "I only really drink licorice and fennel, or lemongrass and ginger, but just hot water is fine too." Laurel stood on tiptoe and began searching through the alarming number of half-used boxes of tea bags. She checked the expiry date before offering. Excellent adulting. "This one's licorice and star anise. Is that close enough?" "Lovely, thank you." Laurel stuck with peppermint for herself, then cleared a board game and a stack of books from the opposite chair and sat down. "So let's start this again, shall we? Who did you say you were?" Marigold took a deep breath. My name is Marigold Ann Nightfield. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a PhD candidate in biomedical science. Laurel offered her hand across the table and Marigold took it. Laurel Windflower, she, her as well. She didn't mention the incomplete MA she'd been postponing for one reason or another for the past 2 years. So is your PhD in monster biology or something? Marigold shook her head. Tibbs, Laurel's one-eyed, torn-eared, statistically should have died a decade ago, cat was sniffing around her boots. Laurel told people he was her pet because even those who knew about witchcraft could get a bit weird about the word familiar. Marigold reached down to stroke him, and he didn't object. Not exactly. I'm doing a personal research project as well, and I'm trying to collect samples from as many monsters as I can, and because you're so close, I was hoping you would let... It's up to the monster, really. He sort of does his own thing. I assume most monsters do. Can't say I've ever made the acquaintance of another. But you are a witch. Laurel nodded. Yes, not a very interesting one, I'm afraid. They rented me this room because they thought I'd be cool with the monster, which I guess I am, but I don't really know anything about him. She took a long sip of her tea. She'd had to couch surf well into her second year of undergrad before she'd found this place. The guy who was moving out wasn't from a family Laurel knew, but he'd recognised her name and knew she was a witch. She didn't see anything wrong with getting a room because of it. The market was abysmal for renters, and plenty of people got a room because they could pay extra, or because they owned a fridge, or because their parents knew someone. Being a witch was sometimes an advantage, but it wasn't an unfair one compared to all that. And she had done the place plenty of good. Bit by bit, her spells had vanquished the mould from the walls and dried out the rooms so the windows didn't leak all the time. The property manager was receptive to their requests for maintenance, and if he had any thoughts of raising the rent, they disappeared as soon as he crossed the front doorway. Laurel didn't usually like nudging people's minds like that, but property managers, like work and income caseworkers, were an ethical exception. The monster made some noises in the night, but he was otherwise no trouble. Most of the time he stayed below the floor. Have you seen it? Marigold asked. Only from the other end of the hallway. He's pink with yellow spots, kind of furry, and according to my former flatmate, he's called Alfred. Alfred? I'm not sure it's his chosen name, but it's weird to have someone in the flat you just call the monster, I suppose. A bit dehumanizing, even if he's not human. Anyway, backtrack. You're doing a PhD? How old are you? It was a blunt question, but Laurel felt that when someone bangs on your door before 10 in the morning, asking to take tissue samples from your monster, they've lost the right to all niceties. And besides, she had given Marigold tea. I'll be 24 in November. I know I come across young. It's because I'm autistic and enthusiastic about things, and also because of my skin. Laurel leaned forward just enough to catch the scent she was expecting. Geranium, she said, and chamomile. Picked at the half moon, confirmed Marigold, because you want a subtle potency, not your skin torn off. I probably started it too young, and it makes me look like a kid. Still, no acne, ever. My grandmother was a witch, but my dad and I are both only children, and neither of us have magic. Probably the line will die with me, but it doesn't mean she couldn't teach me things. Laurel smiled despite herself. It works, doesn't it? It does. There was a pause. So is it okay if Alfred doesn't have a problem with it, if I take some samples? Will it injure him? It's just like a big needle I use. He'll feel it, but it's not like I'm cutting him open or anything. Laurel wanted to say that this was a ridiculous idea and usher this strange woman out of the house immediately. But right now, she couldn't think of a single good reason why, if Alfred didn't object. she should stand in Marigold's way. Which is how it happened that she ended up holding a stranger by the ankles of her Doc Marten boots, as said stranger stretched down the hole in the back of her wardrobe headfirst with a syringe in her hand, talking to a monster in gentle tones. The monster growled. The two of them went back and forth like that for a while, Marigold shuffling her body in the wardrobe, Laurel gripping her ankles. Got it. Pull me up, please. Then Marigold said something that was unintelligible, but sounded a little like a thank you. Could you understand him? Laurel asked as Marigold dusted off her jeans. Random fact about me. I was born with the ability to talk to monsters. But you're not a witch? Nope. It's not magic, it's just heightened processing and perception and stuff. My grandmother tested me through all the usual. I can put together a basic potion just because I've practiced enough times, but there's not a spark of magic in me, much as she'd have liked there to be. It sounded a lot like magic to Laurel, but she wasn't going to argue with someone about their own abilities. Later in the day, when she was stretched out on the sofa, eating fish and chips with her flatmate, Connor, and feeding pieces of squid ring to Tibbs, Laurel heard a low growl from beneath the floor. Her ears pricked up, suddenly anxious, but then the growl settled into a contented purr, low and rumbling beneath her. Alfred may not have liked the needle, but perhaps he didn't entirely object to seeing a new face once in a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Andi. That's great. It's so much fun to get so many different styles and genres here. And I have an interest in witchcraft, so I'm very delighted to hear your reading. Okay, so we're doing very well on time, everyone. So I'm also appreciative that everybody, I hope, timed their reading or guessed how long their reading was going to take and did a very good job at it. Excuse me. Okay, so our next reader is actually two readers. I don't know how they're going to do this, but the team that writes as Jennifer Palgrave, I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yep.
Okay, or actually two people. So we've got a twofer here, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us about the reading they're going to do.
Well, thank you, Alina. And this is Lois, and I'm Hilary. Together we're Jennifer Palgrave. We are life partners as well as writing partners. And sometimes people wonder how that works, but it works. We are older lesbians, and we've had previous lives doing all sorts of things, but writing crime fiction is a retirement activity that we find we're very much enjoying. We have written 3 books so far. They're mainly set in Wellington. We live in Wellington. Some of the time, Wellington is New Zealand's capital city, coolest little capital. And we also spend time in Auckland. And actually, we have family connections in Massachusetts, so we're pretty familiar with that part of the United States. And in fact, our cover designer lives next to Lois's son in Northampton. I was really thrilled to hear when Lois's son bought a house in Northampton, where I've spent time before, and which, of course, I hear is the lesbian capital of the United States, or possibly anyway of Massachusetts. So it's nice to talk to an American audience, and we also see New Zealanders and Australians here. And thank you, Henny, for organising this. I'm going to pass it over to Lois, who's going to introduce Jennifer Palgrave, our pseudonym.
Hi there. And lovely to be here, and thank you for organising it, Henny. And I adored that last reading with the witch in Arrow Valley. It was just great. Anyway, Jennifer Palgrave. I'm Jennifer, and this is Palgrave, because we had to choose a pseudonym, and I chose the first name, and Hilary had trouble finding the second because there were so many people with every surname she looked at, but in the end, that did it. Well, you're holding up where the river goes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hilary and I became Jennifer Palgrave when we decided to do a course to brush up and make more interesting non-fictional writing work stuff that we both did, and then decided that we were enjoying that, and why didn't we just write some fiction? So we decided to do that. So that's Jennifer, and we decided that our fictional PI, or the person, the main protagonist, was a woman, older years, because that was what we knew too. Lauren Fraser she was an editor, and she worked for a publishing firm, and now she's semi-retired, but she still does a bit of work for them. And she tends to stay in her late 60s, early 60s, mid 60s, late 60s. And we hope that she might stay that kind of age, even though time has moved on. Right, what else should I say about Jennifer?
I think we could introduce our books briefly and then do our readings.
Yes.
So our first book is the one that got away, and it's a political poisoning plot. I won't say anything more about that, but we really enjoyed writing it, and that was what made us continue. We couldn't leave our protagonist, Lauren. She'd become a character in our lives, so she had to keep having adventures. So that was the political poisoning plot. And Lois.
So the next one was Rising Tide, and it's about the murder of a climate activist in Wellington, a charismatic guy everybody loved, found drowned, and or was it accidental drowning, or was it foul play? And that's what the book is about. And Lauren gets enmeshed in it again, quite by accident. She falls over these incidents. And finally,
so our most recent book, just published in the last year, is Where the River Goes, and we decided to send Lauren away from Wellington down to some of New Zealand's most iconic scenery, the South Island of New Zealand. You can see it illustrated on the cover there, one of our fabulous braided rivers which come down from the Southern Alps to the sea. And we had to go down there and spend a bit of time researching the book.
It was fun.
And it was a lot of fun. And the tagline is, "A peaceful rural community is shattered by a brutal murder." So I'm going to invite Lois to read a section from this book, and then I'll read a short section as well that introduces Lauren to her on again, off again, mostly off again relationship with a top cop. But for the moment, yes, Lauren is with her close friend Megan.
Megan has come down to South Canterbury, near the mountains, and the braided rivers, with her friend Megan to help Megan's sister, who's having a bad time on their family farm. And she's about to go home, and Megan says, "Oh, you haven't even seen the river, and you haven't seen the irrigation ponds. Let's go for a walk." So Lauren and Megan set off. They set out on the walk down to the river and the irrigation ponds. They reached the end of the road, and Lauren could see the river up ahead. Before them lay an off-road gravelled parking area, and then a multitude of tracks disappearing into the scrub. Megan led the way along a sandy track, and suddenly there was the braided river in all its glory. The main channel ran steadily and roughly, while lesser branches meandered around between small islands of gravel and gorse, dappling in the sunlight. A grey heron waded majestically in the shallows. A pair of ducks paddled happily in a ponded area, and a dragonfly, in its iridescent colours sparkling in the sunlight, hovered above the water. In the distance, on the opposite bank, cows munched grass near the fence. One raised its head, looked at the pair moodily, and pawed at the fence. They used to wander around the riverbed, shitting in it, said Megan, until council put a stop to it. On our side, too, but we're learning. Lots of natives being planted around the edges now. Excuse me. But let's go and look at the irrigation ponds. That's a real story. The stupid thing about the ponds is that they haven't been used yet. Why on earth not? New rules came in about water take that makes it harder for any more water to be diverted from the river. Sounds misconceived, the whole thing, Lauren said. Well, probably all farming cultures use irrigation. It's a good way of using water, long as it doesn't hurt the river. At least we don't have dams on our river. Anyway, look, here's the ponds. A vista of concrete construction opened up. Several huge ponds, all apparently empty. They look the size of an Olympic swimming pool. Lauren lightened the atmosphere. Perhaps they could be put to a better use. Breed some Olympic swimming champions around here. That would work off the farmers' frustration. Megan replied, "It's a damn shame the river's too polluted to swim in anymore." As they approached the first pond, she peered over the edge. "There's a bit of water in here. Must be from that rain before Christmas. It's starting to get sludgy. Perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes." They wandered along to the edge of the next pond. Looking over, they spotted what was beneath them at exactly the same time. "Christ!" That was Megan. "Good God!" Lauren reared back, nearly losing her balance. The body of a man was lying sprawled face down in the sludge at the bottom of the pond. He looked very dead, a staring eye visible, his face turned slightly towards them. The other side of his face was in the mud. His hair was long, tied back in a ponytail. Where it had been combed close to his scalp, it was matted, what looked like dried blood mixed with the fair hair. Flies buzzed around him, creating a loud humming. They clutched each other, and Lauren leant over the edge again. Most of his face was invisible, except for the staring eye. Megan said shakily, he couldn't still be alive, could he?" As Lauren peered again, she could see the paleness on the part of his face that was visible. His skin was looking puffy and bruised. Most horrifying was that dead eye, visible above the waterline and rolled upwards, staring blankly. Her fear and disgust brought back a childhood memory of coming across a dead sheep tangled in a blackberry patch. She'd been running alongside the creek on her grandfather's farm when she spotted it. That memory had haunted her for months, creeping into her dreams. And that was just a sheep. She'd be haunted again. She took a deep breath and reached into her back pocket for her phone. An icy calm swept over her. No chance. He's gone. I'm calling 111. Yet again. Megan looked increasingly pale and sat down suddenly, putting her head between her knees. Then she muttered, "I think I know who it is." So that's that bit.
So we jump further on in the book. After the identity of the body is known and an investigation has been proceeding, it was Sebastian, known to Megan and the farming community. So in this episode, we run into Top Cop Deirdre again. So at 8:45 to the minute, Lauren was on a corner close to the police station. A sleek red car pulled up beside her. The driver leant over and opened the passenger door. Not very unobtrusive, Deirdre, but at least it doesn't have police written all over it. An unmarked car can be useful, especially for dates. Deirdre smiled, but don't worry, I can set a siren going if I need to. Lauren laughed and changed the subject. You've got my case? Yes, it's in the back, and I see you've some other luggage to add to it. Indeed, a couple of large carry bags with Ballantynes, that's Christchurch department store, printed on them had joined Lauren's handbag and sun hat. She turned to throw them on the back seat as Deirdre pulled out and began drawing through the city. Lauren sat back as the car purred along, stealing the odd glance at Deirdre's profile. She was looking particularly lovely, Lauren thought, with her wonderful smooth olive skin, naturally wavy brown hair and piercing brown eyes. Lauren sighed. It seemed no time before they had reached the restaurant and found a park virtually outside. By the time they were seated across from each other at a table, they'd traversed the small talk, and with drinks in front of them, they paused and looked at each other. Lauren spoke first. Oh, Deirdre, I wish we had more time to spend together. This is so... She felt lost for words, resting her arm on the table and stretching it towards Deirdre. Deirdre picked up Lauren's hand in both of hers, cast a quick look around the cafe, and bent forward to kiss Lauren's fingers. In our dreams, Lauren, but it's hopeless. Even if we were in the same city, I'd never see you. This job eats up all my working hours and then my leisure ones. Even this evening, after I've dropped you at the airport, I have to show my face at a mayoral reception. Lauren was embarrassed. I know that. I'm just wishing for might-have-beens. Deirdre was still holding her hand. Lauren pulled it back and raised her glass. Here's to might-have-beens. Deirdre clicked hers. To might-have-beens. Her tone changed. Now we need to order our food. Must make you miss your plane. Lauren picked up the menu and the talk turned to matters of food. Then the general conversation resumed. They skirted difficult topics and talked easily as they ate. Inwardly, Lauren was hugging the phrase to herself. In our dreams. Not just she who had regrets then. Perhaps not just might-have-beens, but might still be. And then Lauren thought about the matters that were troubling her and began, I wasn't going to bother you with this. You'll think I can't go anywhere without it turning into a crime scene. Deirdre tensed, sat up straight in the chair as Lauren poured out the tale of their week at the farm. A suicide, arson, and finally a murder. And it was Megan and I who found the body. It was ghastly. She shivered involuntarily. Deirdre slowly shook her head. Lauren, I can hardly believe it. That's the homicide near Geraldine. You're extraordinary the way you trip over these things. She smiled. It almost seemed inappropriate. But I know the local team already have someone in custody, so at least you have no excuse for getting further involved. Lauren's uneasy feeling struck her again. She couldn't resist mentioning her increasing doubts. There might be more to it than meets the eye. Ro, that's her sidekick friend, Ro's digging has shown that there are some weird dynamics in Sebastian's family. Deirdre screwed up her eyes, opened them again, and glared at Lauren. Lauren Fraser, please tell your friend to get on with her own work, and please do not encourage her.
So thank you, Hilary. Well, as you can see, our books tend to have a bit of climate stuff in them too, both rising tide and where the river goes. We call them lesbian cry, fi.
Cry, cry, fi. It's a new genre, apparently. And then the lesbian touch to it is a completely new genre.
Yes. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And that's an interesting new spin. It's a micro genre for sure, but we need all the subtleties we can get, especially since we're kind of deluged right now with contemporary romance. So any kind of new spin is welcome. But thank you very much for reading. And I do have to ask, because I was in publishing for about 45 years, and one thing I avoided like the plague was writing a contract with a pair of writers or a team of writers. Maybe it's better because you're a couple, but whenever two people who were not related got involved, and sometimes there were like 4 or 5 authors, it was always a crisis. Somebody had an issue with something, they didn't like something about the cover or this or that or some other damn thing. And so anything to avoid that kind of a contract was a good thing. So tell us how it works. Who does what? Do one of you do the dialogue and the other one does the scene setting?
We work out the plot as we go along, and when we've got 2 or 3 scenes ahead of us, we take one each and work on that. And we read it to each other and might make a few changes. And then we type, one of us will type in the other's work, and because we write in a pen to start with. And then we put it onto the computer. And by the time we've done that, when we go back, we find it quite hard to remember who did what bit. It gets amalgamated because of the talking and the writing and the changing at each phase. And if we have, people ask if we argue about it. For some reason, we don't. I don't know why we don't.
No, there's no disputes. We sometimes have bits of banter, obviously, about choice of words, about what's happening next, and particularly about whether something's likely to have happened, is something believable. And I'm always trying to insert my favourite character.
Her favourite character is Ro,
yeah,
who is Lauren's sidekick, and she's a tall, rangy woman with long red hair. And Hilary is none of those things, but I sometimes think she's Hilary's alter ego.
So I always try and make sure that there's plenty of room in the book for Ro's interests. She's a feminist historian, and she's always got a little buzz going on about something, but somehow it's always relevant to the plot. And Rising Tide, Ro got into trouble in Antarctica, which helped solve the issues. And in this one, she's staying up quite by chance, near Lauren. She's staying on a high country sheep station and delving into their family history. And it
all feeds into the plot.
Yes, I have to make it feed into the plot, because
otherwise she's not allowed to.
But mostly we just love Lauren, our main character, and the characters kind of live with us. We often talk about what they're up to, so it's like having an imaginary friend, but we're not children.
Well, I think we're all children, actually, but we're our adult disguise most of the time. Okay, so I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Hold on, I'm just going to change the view so I can see everybody. There weren't any questions in the chat, so unless I didn't see your question. If you did put one in the chat and I didn't see it, please raise your hand. No.
I have a comment more than a question. I just wanted to, I'd been writing down little notes of favorite bits from each of the other authors' writing. So I just wanted to mention I quite like from Kim, the head that felt like an overheated melon in a compost heap. I enjoyed from E.P. Stuart the little boy who didn't know who his character was and was quite devastated. I thought that was very relatable. I liked many of Andi's lines. I quite enjoyed excellent adulting and the ethical exceptions. And then from the Jennifer Palgrave team, I quite liked that firstly, it was just a sheep, which I feel is like, we have to represent from New Zealand just a sheep, but also can't seem to go anywhere without it turning into a crime scene. It's just like classic for the genre.
Yeah.
But in terms of a question, maybe for the crime writers, what do you think of New Zealand / Australia and sort of the scene or the location as almost providing part of almost a character itself or a mood in terms of writing in terms of writing crimes, or what makes New Zealand or Australia kind of interesting from your perspectives?
Well, thanks, Jade. For me, they're both awesome landscapes, and they absolutely feature in my books. I think in Australia, something about the vastness, the vast open spaces is quite different to somewhere like Europe or maybe the States, although I know in the States, although I haven't seen a lot of it, I've seen bits, I've visited bits, but there's something about the spaciousness which I think some people find raises their anxiety or something. I don't know. And in New Zealand, there's a lot of ruggedness and isolation. And for some people, I think those sorts of things can affect you psychically, that like people feel out of their depth in sort of awesome landscapes sometimes. So to me, they kind of make an ideal setting for something where you're trying to provide suspense and tension. It's almost like someone being at odds, not being completely comfortable in that environment. And I just wanted to say to Jennifer Palgrave that you answered my question. I wondered how you can keep a consistent tone when there's two people inputting to the actual writing, but you've answered that about talking about your process. And Jade, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I want to ask about your cover. It's absolutely beautiful. Did you do the design for the cover?
No, I didn't do my own design. Which, yeah, I sort of once upon a time would have expected to be the person doing it, but the team had their own artists, so we had a few sessions and I gave some ideas, and they were really easy to work with. They had a few different ideas, and they're young and they're like looking at combinations of things, and they're it was very interactive to put it all together. So they were really great.
It's stunning. Yeah, cool.
I just wanted to say that's an interesting observation, Kim, about the vastness of the landscape. And I imagine that helps create the tension in a crime book as well as motivation for characters. Would you say that's true?
I joke in the Kalnick series that she works in a body dumper's paradise. If you're not familiar with the Hawkesbury region, the Hawkesbury is a major river that goes through quite a vast area, and when you get up high and on these huge sandstone escarpments, you can look at ranks and ranks of forest that just goes as far as you can see. So, I mean, it can make you feel pretty insignificant, and so it's perfect for my park ranger who's seemingly regularly stumbling over bodies now in the body dumper's paradise. So it's not a desert landscape, it's a more a forest landscape. So it can be quite claustrophobic at times rather than expansive, but it still lends itself to some kind of sinister intent at times, I guess. Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, our books are mainly city-based, mainly in Wellington. But Wellington itself is, I think, with Chicago, the windiest city in the world. So you can, if you want a bit of tension, you can have a really windy day where everyone's being nearly blown over. And of course, Wellington is also very prone to earthquakes. It's not, New Zealand is sometimes called the Shaky Isles. And so we can align the weather a bit with tension, but we love the landscapes around Wellington. They're very easy to get into the bush. I'm not
Our
sure.
forests.
Yeah, I guess I don't find them sinister exactly, but the last book where we went down to the South Island and made more use of the landscape, which is quite romantic landscape. People gave us pretty good feedback actually on that last book, and I think they enjoyed being taken into New Zealand rural settings, which are kind of iconic. Well, Jade mentioned the sheep. Yeah, well, we can live a long time without seeing a sheep, but as soon as you get out, you do have these flocks of sheep on the road and those back roads, and guys wearing particularly New Zealand clothes, swandrays, and gumboots, driving along in their utes, that kind of thing.
But also, I think because it is fabulous landscape, and we've done quite a bit of hiking over the years around that area as well, and it's just magnificent. People might remember some of the Lord of the Rings movies. They were made around that area with big, beautiful braided rivers, and part of the reason for our books is that the beautiful braided rivers and the gorgeous mountains, climate change and pollution of various sorts is really harming them. And I think that gives us an impetus too. And Lauren's a very environmentalist sort of person. She's political, and she lives in Wellington and writes policy. Well, she edits, but she's a policy sort of person. But it's good for her to get out into the real New Zealand as well. So we loved writing that book. We might go up next. She's certainly not going away, Lauren. I think she might go up to the Coromandel next.
Yes, might be a bit of mining.
Where there's been a bit
activism.
of mining going on.
Yeah, we have a kind of serious theme, but a lot of the book is lighthearted and then there's tension. But underneath, actually,
and then there's Deirdre as well.
And there's love interest, but we're also quite serious about climate activism. Yeah.
Stunned everybody into silence.
Any other questions for our authors today?
I've seen one for me in the chat. You don't mind me answering it? You said you write under two names. What are they, and what's the difference? So I made the Andi R. Christopher, and I'll write these down in the chat, because I was writing several things that were quite similar. So I wanted people who liked that sort of work to be able to find them easily. So my Andi R. Christopher books are contemporary or urban fantasy. They're set mostly here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. They're queer. I think they're all sapphic so far. And they're fairly light. There's magic. There's usually a bit of romance in there. So Succulents and Spells is one of those. Andi C. Buchannan is everything else. So there's a lot of speculative fiction. There's some non-fiction. There's a bit of crime in there. I think the one most of interest to this audience is From a Shadow Grave, which is also set in Wellington, is also very queer, but it's got a historical angle to it. So Thanks for asking. I will, yeah, those are in the chat.
Okay, I've got that. All right. If there are no other questions, I think we'll end a little early. Not that early. We filled almost 2 hours. What I will do is once we finish, I'll stop the recording and I will prepare it. I'll put it on my own YouTube and share the link in the campfire, but I'll also send it to the authors. I did have a little problem because we had our technical glitch, and I apologize and I appreciate your patience about that. But I did start a little late. I started exactly where Kim's reading began, so I'll record a little introduction to kind of make it work. We have to do things to make things work. Tech doesn't always do what we want it to, does it? Anyway, thanks again to every one of our authors and to Henrietta for doing all the groundwork, suggesting this idea and putting it together.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for getting up early over there in New Zealand, too.
Yes, thank you all
Staying
for
up
coming.
late in Europe. We do have some guests from Europe besides Henrietta. We have Katerina over there. And so we really are all over the place today. Thanks again and take care. We'll be doing more features in the campfire. Please, if you're not already a member, I did put the link in the chat to find us on Facebook, and we'll see you there. Take care.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone, that was great.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.